Earth, 2385. A planet once teeming with life, now a shadow of its former self. Towering skyscrapers lay half destroyed, their skeletal remains reaching skyward like the bones of an ancient beast. The air was thick with the smell of burnt metal and ozone. The stars that once adorned Earth's sky were now obscured by the looming presence of the Xalot warships, hovering like vultures over a dying world. Kiera Holt stood in the remnants of what had been a command center, staring at the flickering hologram in front of her. The room, filled with static and the occasional hum of malfunctioning tech, was a far cry from the bustling operations she had once led. Once, she had been part of Earth's finest, an officer, a strategist. Now, she was the reluctant leader of humanity's last resistance. The hologram displayed a map of the planet, marked with red dots indicating Xalot-controlled zones. The Xalot, an empire vast and cold, saw Earth as nothing more than a forgotten backwater. But Kiera knew the truth. Earth was a prize. And the Xalot were coming to claim it. Time's running out, Kiera muttered to herself. Her fingers hovered over the map. She could feel the weight of history pressing on her chest. Her people had been written off. Forgotten by the galaxy, dismissed as too weak, too fractured. But she knew better. Humans had a power no alien force could comprehend. Survival. Behind her, a voice broke the silence. Are we still on track for the convoy mission? Lieutenant Jace Maddox's voice was gruff, his face tired. The lines around his eyes spoke of sleepless nights and too many battles. We are, Kiera replied, her voice steady, but there was a weight to it. The convoy, a vital supply line for the Xalot, was their target. If they could destroy it, they would send a message that humanity was not a race to be underestimated. But Kiera knew the risks. The Xalot's fleet was vast. The odds were slim. But Kiera had never been one to back down from a fight. You think we stand a chance? Jace asked, walking closer, his boots clanking on the concrete floor. He crossed his arms, the weight of their impending strike hanging in the air. We don't have much of a chance. But we've got something they don't. We've got humanity. They think we're weak. They think they can wipe us out without a second thought. But they're wrong. Jace's gaze softened. I hope you're right, Kiera. But we're not just up against them. We're up against the entire galaxy. Kiera's eyes flickered to the map once more. No, Jace. We're up against ourselves. We've been knocked down time and time again. But now now we rise. The rest of the team, a ragtag group of survivors, had gathered in the center of the room. Ava, a young mechanic with grease-stained hands, was busy making last-minute repairs on the old transport vehicle they'd salvaged. The tech was outdated, half-functioning at best, but it would have to do. Kiera turned to the team. All right, listen up. The Xalot convoy is moving through the eastern sector. We'll intercept them here. She pointed to a spot on the map. And hit them with everything we've got. This isn't about winning, it's about making them pay. We'll give them a taste of what happens when you underestimate humanity. Ava, looking up from the engine, added, The transport's ready? It's not much, but it'll get us there undetected. Just don't expect it to hold up under fire for too long. We only need it to hold up long enough to strike. Kiera replied, her voice sharp. We'll be in and out. Once we've taken out their supply chain, we'll have the chance to regroup and plan our next move. The team nodded, the tension palpable in the air. They were outnumbered, under-equipped, and facing an enemy who had no reason to fear them. Yet there was a fire in each of their eyes. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. Jace approached Kiera, his face grave. You've always been a leader, Kiera. But this time, are we ready for this? The Xalot won't just let us walk away. We don't need to walk away, Kiera said, turning to face him fully. We're not just going to strike at them. We're going to show them. We're going to remind the galaxy that humans may have been weak once, but we never gave up. The night air was cool as Kiera's team gathered in the shadows, waiting. The transport, a hulking mass of rusted metal, hummed softly in the background. The convoy was on its way. Kiera could feel her heart racing, the weight of their mission pressing down on her. This was their moment. They couldn't afford failure. If they lost, it would be the final blow to the last remnants of humanity's hope. If they succeeded, however, the tide of the war could change. Ready? Kiera asked, her voice low, but firm. As ready as we'll ever be, Jace replied, his hand resting on his weapon. Ava gave a quick thumbs up, the rest of the team following suit. They were ready. But Kiera knew that no amount of preparation could predict what would happen next. All they had was their will, and that was all they would need. The convoy appeared on the horizon, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Kiera gave a signal. The transport roared to life as it lurched forward, the sound of its engines cutting through the stillness. The first blast hit the convoy before they had a chance to react. The Xalot never saw it coming. Explosions ripped through the night, lighting up the landscape in a violent display of fire and debris. Kiera and her team moved swiftly, taking out targets with precise efficiency. For a moment, it felt like they had the upper hand. But just as quickly the tables turned. A second, larger wave of Xalot reinforcements appeared from behind a ridge. Kiera's heart skipped a beat as she saw the gleaming weapons and armored vehicles descending on them. "Fall back!" Kiera shouted, but it was already too late. The battle was no longer in their favor. Kiera's team fought valiantly, but the Xalot were closing in. The transport was disabled, and their ammunition was running low. Kiera's mind raced. What now? Jace, Ava, get to the transport. I'll cover you, Kiera yelled, firing a shot that took down a Xalot soldier. But Jace shook his head. No, Kiera. We're not leaving you. We fight together, or we don't fight at all, Kiera said through gritted teeth. Now go! As Jace and Ava began to retreat toward the wreckage of the transport, Kiera stood her ground. The Xalot commander, Varnak, would come for them, but Kiera had one final card to play. Just as the enemy began to close in, a brilliant explosion rocked the ground. The remnants of an old Earth satellite, repurposed as a weapon, had detonated, buying the team just enough time to escape into the darkness. They had won the battle. But the war, that was still to come. The smoke from the blast still hung thick in the air as Kiera Holt and her team made their way through the charred remains of the battlefield. The Xalot convoy had been shattered, their supplies strewn across the ground like discarded toys, but the cost had been high. Kiera's breath came in shallow gasps as she led her group toward the extraction point. The mission had been a success in part, but they had lost more than they had gained, Jace Maddox limped beside her, his arm clutching the side of his chest where a burn wound had begun to seep through his uniform. Ava, the mechanic, had managed to patch him up in the field, but Kiera could see the strain in his eyes. Are you okay? Kiera asked, her voice softer than usual. She hadn't let herself think about the wounded until now. The weight of each fallen soldier would come later. I'll be fine, Jace grunted, wiping blood from his mouth. Just keep moving. I can still shoot. But his words lacked conviction. Behind them, the remaining members of the team were falling into formation, their faces smeared with dirt and exhaustion. None of them had expected this many casualties, and the survivors were visibly shaken, each one quietly processing the intensity of their first real battle. Get to the transport, Kiera ordered, her tone decisive, pulling the group back into action. We can't stay here. As they approached the wreckage of their old transport, Kiera's heart sank. The vehicle had been a lifeline, a small, rusted, unreliable thing, but it was theirs. Now, it lay in pieces, the fires smoldering across its broken frame. Without it, they were stranded. The remnants of their mission would be hard to salvage. Ava crouched beside the wreckage, her face drawn in concentration. She ran her hands over the shattered parts, muttering to herself. We're not going to make it far without a ride, Ava said, lifting her head to look at Kiera. But there's a chance I can get something working. How long? Kiera asked, already bracing herself for another blow. Time was never on their side, and every minute spent out here increased their vulnerability. Depends on what we can salvage, Ava answered, her fingers already moving with practiced speed. I can jury-rig something, but it's not going to be pretty. Jace shook his head. We don't have time for a not pretty plan. The Xalot will be here soon. Kiera paused, scanning the horizon. She had no illusions about their situation. They were deep in enemy territory, surrounded on all sides by a force that outmatched them in every way. The only reason they'd made it this far was luck. And luck was a poor substitute for strength. Jace is right, she said, her voice low but filled with determination. We're not waiting around to be caught. We move now, no matter what. But just as the team was about to turn and head toward the makeshift cover of the nearby hills, a voice interrupted them. You're not leaving. The voice was calm, devoid of the usual aggression Kiera had come to expect from Xalot soldiers. It came from the shadows, and as Kiera spun around, she saw a figure stepping out of the darkness, a figure in Xalot armor, but there was something different about him. The soldier wasn't wearing the usual cold and personal helmet. Instead, his face was visible, weathered, but human in appearance. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar that ran from his forehead to his cheek. But what caught Kiera's attention was the defiant gleam in his eyes. He wasn't one of the usual Xalot invaders. This man, no, this Xalot officer, wasn't here to fight for the Xalot. Who the hell are you? Jace growled, his hand going for his weapon. The officer raised his hands in surrender, but his expression didn't change. I'm not here to fight you, he said, his voice surprisingly steady. I'm here to talk. Kiera stepped forward, narrowing her eyes. She had seen many things, but a defector from the Xalot was not one of them. She was cautious, too cautious to trust a single word this man spoke, You're Xalot, Kiera said, her voice tinged with suspicion. You've been hunting us for years. Why should we believe you now? I'm not here for your trust, the officer replied. I'm here to stop a war, your war, The words hung in the air. Kiera, Jace, and Ava exchanged looks, each one trying to gauge whether this was some form of Xalot trickery. Kiera stepped closer, her eyes locked on the man. I don't have time for games. Who the hell are you? My name is Tarek. I used to serve under Supreme Commander Varnak, the officer replied. I was part of the unit assigned to wipe you out. But that's before I saw something that made me question everything I'd been told about humans. Everything I thought I knew about your weakness. Kiera's pulse quickened. This was dangerous territory. The Xalot were known for their ruthlessness, and their commanders were never quick to defect. Tarek's words felt like an echo in the dark. A lifeline thrown at a drowning soul. She was tempted to reject his offer, to turn away from the potential risk he posed. But something about him made her hesitate. And what's this something? Kiera asked, her tone hard. The way you fight, Tarek said, his eyes flashing. You're not like the other races. You don't give up. You don't run. Even when the odds are stacked against you. I've seen it, the fire in your eyes, and I know you can win. You can beat Varnak. Kiera's mind raced. Could she trust this man? Was he the first of many to defect, or was this a trap? Her gut told her that he wasn't lying, but trusting him meant risking everything. Tell me why I shouldn't kill you right now, Kiera said coldly, but the anger in her voice was replaced by an odd sense of curiosity. Tarek dropped his hands slowly, his face a mixture of resolve and regret. Because I have information you need, he said. There's a hidden supply depot, the key to breaking their blockade, Varnak's forces are stretched thin, and this depot holds the weapons you need to fight back. You'll never get it without my help. Jace and Ava stood behind Kiera, tense and wary. The silence between them was thick with uncertainty, but Kiera's decision was already forming. We don't have a choice, Kiera said, her voice firm. We'll take your information. But know this, if you betray us, I will make you regret it, Tarek nodded, unfazed by her threat. I'm not here to betray you. I'm here to see you win. With a sharp nod, Kiera motioned for the team to follow her. Lead the way. As they moved into the shadows, preparing for the next phase of their mission, Kiera couldn't shake the feeling that they had just crossed a line. One that would either bring them victory or doom them all. The winds howled through the jagged rocks as Kiera and her team made their way to the hidden supply depot, the ground beneath them cracked and dry from the relentless heat of Earth's dying sun. Tarek led the way, his form moving with quiet purpose, every step calculated, as though he knew the path like the back of his hand. The rest of the team followed, their faces drawn with exhaustion but burning with determination. Each of them had lost something along the way, friends, hope, innocence, but they still fought, clinging to the belief that they could win. Kiera's mind raced, the memory of their last mission still fresh in her mind. The blast, the smoke, the weight of loss. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. And now, they had a fragile ally in Tarek, a defector from the Xalot Empire. The trust between them was thin, barely more than a thread, but it was all they had. How far is it? Jace's voice broke through Kiera's thoughts. He had his hand on his sidearm, eyes scanning the terrain. Tarek didn't turn to look at him. We're close. The depot is well hidden, but the Xalot don't think anyone will be crazy enough to look for it here. Kiera felt a pit form in her stomach. Why tell us about it? You don't owe us anything. You could be leading us into a trap. Tarek paused, his eyes distant, and for a moment Kiera saw a flicker of something, regret maybe, or guilt. But when he spoke, his voice was unwavering. I told you. I don't believe in the Xalot's cause anymore. I saw too many things, too many lives lost for nothing. The way they're using your people. You don't deserve to be wiped out. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to make things right. Kiera glanced at him, still unsure. She didn't trust easily, and certainly not a soldier who had spent his life under the Xalot's banner. But there was something in his eyes, something that told her he was sincere. For now, that was enough. They moved in silence, the only sounds being the crunch of gravel beneath their boots and the occasional rustle of wind through the sparse trees. As they reached the edge of a narrow gorge, Tarek stopped. He crouched low, signaling for the others to do the same. The depot is down there, he said, pointing to a ravine, the entrance to which was concealed by a mass of fallen boulders. Kiera's sharp eyes noticed the faint glint of metal beneath the rocks, a sign of something more deliberate. The Xalot think it's impossible to reach from here. But we'll need to get through that ravine without alerting their patrols. Ava, who had been unusually quiet, stepped forward, adjusting the makeshift goggles on her face. I can rig something up to block the radar signature long enough for us to get through. But it's going to be tight. Do it, Kiera ordered. And hurry. We don't have much time. As Ava moved to the side, setting to work, Kiera turned her attention back to Tarek. You said the depot holds weapons. What kind of weapons? Tarek's gaze was grim. The Xalot keep their best stuff there. Energy rifles, explosives, and some prototype tech, things that could give you a fighting chance. But it's not just a stash of weapons. The depot is also a key logistical point for the Xalot's control over this region. Taking it down will deal a significant blow to their operations. Jace, now standing beside Kiera, leaned in, his voice low. And if we get caught? They'll kill you, Tarek said bluntly, his tone unflinching. The Xalot don't leave survivors. But if you move fast enough, if you hit them hard, you might have a chance to escape. There was no room for doubt. Kiera could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her chest, but there was no other choice. If they didn't act now, Earth would fall, and the rest of the galaxy would never take humanity seriously again. Ava finished adjusting her equipment and nodded to Kiera. It's ready. We have one shot at this. Kiera turned to the team. Move out. Keep low and stay silent. We can't afford to be spotted. The group made their way toward the ravine, the shadows growing longer as they neared the hidden entrance to the depot. Tarek led them with unerring accuracy, each step calculated to avoid detection. Kiera's senses were on high alert, every nerve fired with the knowledge that they were walking straight into enemy territory. She could feel the tension in the air, a weight that pressed down on her like the planet's gravity was doubled. They reached the edge of the ravine, and Kiera took a deep breath. The entrance was just ahead, the rocks now shifting in place, revealing the hidden path. Ava's radar-blocking tech had done its job. For now, they were invisible. Kiera glanced back at her team, locking eyes with each member. They all nodded, silently acknowledging the danger and the stakes. And then they moved. The passage was narrow, their bodies scraping against jagged rock as they made their way through. The silence was broken only by the sound of their breath, the occasional rustle of armor, and the distant, haunting howls of Earth's dying wildlife. Finally, they reached the depot entrance. It was a massive, reinforced steel door, designed to withstand the harshest of attacks. But it wasn't a permanent fixture, it had been designed to be opened. And with the right code, it would grant them access to the cache of weapons that could turn the tide of war. Tarek stepped forward, his hand hovering over a panel on the side. His eyes flicked to Kiera, and then he pressed a series of buttons in rapid succession. There was a low hum, followed by a grinding sound as the door slowly began to open. But before they could step inside, a sudden, harsh voice echoed through the ravine. "Stop!" Kiera froze, her heart leaping into her throat. She signaled for the team to stay still, her fingers brushing the grip of her weapon. The voice came again, sharper this time. "Move out, now! Or we will open fire!" It was a Xalot patrol. Kiera cursed under her breath, silently assessing the situation. There were only 5 of them, and they were positioned too far from the entrance for a direct shot. She had only one option: strike first. "Go!" Kiera shouted. "Take them down!" The order was given, and chaos erupted. Jace and Ava moved swiftly, their weapons coming to life as they targeted the guards with deadly precision. Kiera followed close behind, her focus unshaken. The Xalot soldiers fell one by one, their armor no match for the relentless speed and skill of the resistance. Tarek stood frozen for a moment, watching the battle unfold. His hands clenched into fists as he watched Kiera fight, not as an enemy, but as an ally. And for the first time in years, Tarek felt the stirrings of hope. By the time the last Xalot soldier hit the ground, Kiera stood over them, her weapon lowered but her eyes burning with intensity. "Let's go," she said, turning back to the door. With a deep breath, they stepped inside. The depot was vast, filled with rows of weapons, energy cells, and the advanced tech they would need to fight back. Kiera couldn't help but smile. They had just taken the first step toward winning the war. The moment Kiera stepped into the depot, the weight of their success settled over her like a heavy cloak. The room was vast, illuminated by harsh fluorescent lights that hummed with the quiet menace of 1,000 dormant weapons. The Xalot had underestimated them. This stash of energy rifles, explosive charges, and prototype tech was a small victory, but it was the victory they needed to shift the tides. Yet, even as her hands brushed the cool metal of a high-powered rifle, Kiera could feel the pressure mounting. The team had successfully infiltrated the Xalot's hidden supply hub, but this wasn't the turning point. Not yet. "Take what you can carry," Kiera said, her voice cool and collected, masking the tension that was coiling inside her. "We'll need all of it." Jace, still nursing his burn wound, moved toward a nearby weapons rack. His grimace was hidden behind a determined frown, but Kiera could see the fatigue in his movements. Ava, her hands trembling slightly, examined a crate of ammunition, her mind clearly racing through calculations as she inventoried the resources they'd secured. "This could be enough to sustain us for a few weeks," Ava said, wiping the sweat from her brow. "But we need to make sure we have a way to carry it all. We're not exactly flush with transport." "Then we'll make do with what we've got," Kiera replied, her eyes scanning the depot. They had enough firepower to take out a battalion, but without transport or a solid exit strategy, their odds of escaping unscathed were slim. Tarek, who had been standing silently in the corner, watching as the team scavenged, finally spoke. His voice was low, filled with regret and something else. Guilt. Kiera wasn't sure. You'll need more than weapons, Tarek said, stepping toward Kiera. There's a Xalot forward base just beyond this depot. It's lightly guarded for now, but when they realize what's happened, they'll send a response force. You'll be walking into a hornet's nest. Kiera felt a shiver run through her, but she didn't flinch. This was their moment. She couldn't let fear stop her now. Then we'll make it count, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. We need to keep them off our backs while we plan our next move. We can't afford to get caught. Tarek hesitated, looking as if he wanted to say more. But he merely nodded and turned back toward the weapons crate, his thoughts clearly miles away. The team worked quickly, packing up the weapons and supplies they could carry. Jace finished loading an energy rifle with mechanical precision, his movements sharp despite his injury. Ava rigged an old transport cart to carry the heavier ammo, and Kiera made a mental note of their supplies, enough to cause serious damage, but not enough to take on the entire Xalot fleet. It was a dangerous gamble, one Kiera had taken too many times before. Once they had everything they needed, Kiera gathered her team, her expression hardening as she glanced over them. This wasn't just another skirmish. This was the turning point. If they survived this, they would prove to the galaxy, and to the Xalot, that humans were not to be underestimated. We move out now, Kiera said, the edge in her tone unmistakable. We need to hit the forward base before they realize what's happening. The element of surprise is all we've got left. Jace nodded, his face tight with determination. You heard her. Let's go. With that, they made their way toward the exit, the door to the depot closing with a faint hiss. The air outside was dry and hot, the oppressive heat of the desert surrounding them. But it didn't matter. This was their fight. As they neared the ridge that led toward the Xalot base, Kiera's heart raced. She could hear the distant hum of a Xalot patrol ship, its presence growing stronger with every passing second. The tension in her chest tightened. They had to move, and they had to move fast, I'll take point, Jace said, stepping forward and signaling for the others to follow. He was always the first to volunteer for dangerous assignments, and Kiera appreciated that about him. Stay low, Kiera instructed, her eyes scanning the horizon. We don't want them to spot us before we're in position. The team moved as one, low to the ground and fast. They kept to the shadows, using the terrain to their advantage. But even as they crept forward, Kiera's mind raced. If they were spotted now, everything they'd fought for would be lost. When they reached the outskirts of the base, Kiera gave the signal to halt. The Xalot soldiers were spread out in small groups, their patrols almost lax. It was as if they still hadn't realized the full scope of what had happened. Kiera motioned to Ava, who set up a makeshift communication jammer to block any attempts to call for backup. On my mark, Kiera whispered. She watched as each member of her team readied their weapons, waiting for the signal. This was it. Their one shot. Now, she ordered. They burst into action. The sound of gunfire was sharp and immediate, shattering the quiet of the desert. Jace led the charge, cutting down the nearest Xalot soldiers with ruthless precision. Ava followed closely, her focus on taking out the weapons systems that the Xalot had set up to defend their base. Kiera moved with calculated efficiency, picking off the stragglers with a cold detachment that only the heat of battle could ignite. In the chaos, Tarek moved like a shadow, his body blending into the background. But Kiera noticed him. He wasn't just a defector, he was one of them now. The trust she'd extended, albeit reluctantly, was beginning to feel less like a risk and more like a necessity. Keep moving! Kiera shouted as they made their way deeper into the base. The Xalot soldiers were falling fast, but they still had a long way to go. The battle raged for what felt like an eternity, but eventually, the last of the Xalot soldiers fell. Silence descended on the base, broken only by the sound of heavy breathing and the distant hum of the now-dead communications relay. Kiera stood over the body of a fallen Xalot officer, her chest heaving with exertion. She was covered in dirt and sweat, her hand still gripping the energy rifle, but there was something else in her eyes now. Resolve. We did it, Ava said breathlessly, staring out over the now quiet base. We actually did it. Kiera nodded, but her mind was already moving ahead. The Xalot would be back, soon, and with reinforcements. They had no time to celebrate their victory. We move now, she said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. This was just the beginning. We hit them hard here, but the real fight's still coming. Jace, still bleeding from his wound but standing tall, gave her a determined look. We're ready. Kiera glanced at Tarek one last time. They were in this together now. Let's go, she said. This war isn't over. As they moved away from the base, heading toward their next challenge, Kiera knew one thing for certain. They had given the galaxy a glimpse of what humanity could do. And that was only the beginning.